and wellness cultivator and a consultant, I'm constantly meeting medical experts where I get to learn and share an integrative approach to elevate health and lifestyle. Today, I have the honor to converse with a man whom I describe as an encyclopedia on health. I met him around 15 years ago, and it was my gut that made the decision to work with him, study and learn, which gave me the opportunity to help in not only improving my health, but also helping others. All my life, like many, I believed in we are what we eat, but he truly made me understand we are what we digest. Our rejuvenating session today is about fasting, the key to good health. Over the years, I've practiced fasting as medicine and as my daily rhythm. The best way I can describe it is just the way silence around us helps in calming us. Fasting is the silence for our organs. It's also helped me further understand the importance of self-responsibility. I'm thrilled to introduce Professor Dr. Harald Stossier, founder of Viva Meyer, the Center for Modern Meyer Medicine in Austria. He's an electrical engineer, author of 12 books, and a policymaker in complementary medicine. In 1985, it was Dr. Stossier who headed the policymaking in the European Union to legalize and recognize complementary medicine. Dr. Harald Stossier has spoken on platforms amongst thought leaders, politicians who determine our headlines, policymakers who pretty much shape our future, and entertainers who sprinkle stardust on our mundane existence. He believes that significant conversations are the way to generate solutions, and Rejuvenate offers just that progressive and directional platform. This talk is an opportunity to listen, learn, get inspired, and take some meaningful information. Thank you all in joining me in welcoming Dr. Stossier from Austria.
Hello to everybody, and a very warm welcome from Austria. And Irina, thank you for that introduction. It's not necessary to add one word. Thank you for that word.
Well, I'd love to begin with one of your favorite quotes from Mahatma Gandhi ji that you often use around the world. Fasting are a part of my being. I can as well do without my eyes, for instance, as I can without fasts. What the eyes are for the outer world, fasts are for the inner. Dr. Stossier, what does fasting mean to you on a personal level and as a medical practitioner?
Look, fasting is, I would say, one of the strongest tools on one side to keep us healthy. Mm-hmm. On the other side, also for me as a practitioner, medical practitioner, general practitioner, it is the important tool to treat people. So we have so many different diseases around the world, and fasting is like an operation without a knife. You can help people with total different diseases. You can clear the body, you can cleanse, you can eliminate so many toxins, and you can help people to get then, I would say, a way of a healthier eating habit and healthier life. But fasting, and that's the important, you haven't to think about fasting is only drinking liquids. No, fasting has also to improve our eating habit. So what we do is we teach people, we learn people, we instruct people how to eat in the right way. Mm-hmm. So fasting also means to eat in the right way, chewing the food in the best way, respecting the daily rhythm, to eat more in the morning and less in the evening, which I think is a problem in most countries of the world. To respect that rhythm is really important, because we know that from all the medical schools around the world, we have more capacity to digest food in the morning and less in the evening, but our social life is totally the opposite. So to respect that rhythm is really important. And in our days, modern science also has developed this as one of the most important things when we're talking about intermittent fasting, which is a really great field in the science now. We know that this is a helpful instrument for therapies and also for preventative aspects. But also, it is important to inform people about the food, the quality of food, what kind of food in which matters is really important. But also it's important to talk about liquid to drink in the right way. We all, especially in the Western world, we're always in a hurry and we drink not really enough good quality water. And also important to talk about the time to drink. It's not with food, it's always between meals. So these few aspects, I think, are more important than anything else. And for me, it's the basis of any additional medical therapy.
So you always use fasting as medicine to treat different chronic diseases. And of course, people follow it mainly for weight loss. If we take an example of one of the most common diseases, diabetes, how does a doctor such as yourself treat the patient with fasting? And as you said, fasting is not the only thing, it's a holistic approach. Could you walk us through, Dr. Stossier, a disease like diabetes? How do you work with it?
So first of all, many people think when they fast, the idea is to reduce their body weight. That's maybe right if somebody is overweight, but we have so many people having a normal body weight, but also have a disease, especially when you're talking now about diabetes. Of course, we know that type 2 diabetes is more a disease of elderly people. Elderly people have a tendency of being a bit overweight. And so, yes, that's right. But it's not a matter of weight. It's a matter of health. Yeah? And the eating habit is important for all of us. Mm-hmm. So now when you are talking about, or when we want to talk about diabetes, which is really a worldwide problem, I think, yes, it depends on our food intake, especially the carbohydrates, because the carbohydrates are more or less the energy, they bring the energy into the body. So we need these carbohydrates, but we also have, when we go back maybe 100, 200,000 years, we didn't have every day so many carbohydrates in our food. So what we do is we store the carbohydrates we don't need for the actual physical activity. We store them in our body as fat. And additionally to that, we have to metabolize these carbohydrates, and we need a hormone called insulin for that. But also we need a lot of other cofactors like minerals, vitamins, trace elements. So the strategy is on one side to train people to eat less carbohydrates, especially related to their physical activity. So if somebody is running every day for 10 kilometers, he would need more than another guy sitting only in the desk in the office. Mm-hmm. But additionally to that, yeah, it's also important to train people to eat the right carbohydrates. So we have industrial prepared carbohydrates, we have the pure sugar, we have the white flour food, which is made from the flour without any minerals, without the fibers. So it's pure carbohydrate. And that has also more side effects because we take all the minerals from our body to metabolize the sugar. So it is a combination of, I would say, training the eating habits, taking the right amount of food, but also giving people the cofactors like minerals, magnesium, potassium, the B vitamins. We need some antioxidants. And also important, when we eat less carbohydrates, we don't need more protein. So the amount of protein is also important for diabetic people, because many people think they have to eat then more meat, fish, whatever. That's not necessary. We should keep that in a normal level. But on the other side, more fatty acids from the good quality fatty acids, unsaturated fatty acids. So this would be a strategy for diabetic people specifically. But again, it is a healthy eating habit for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Stossier, mostly around the world, we hear diabetic patients are given the advice by doctors themselves saying you must eat every 2 hours to keep your glucose level all balanced. That's one thing we commonly hear. Doesn't fasting literally, oppose that theory of diabetic patients need to eat every 2 hours on something and nibble the snacks?
Look, this recommendation to eat every 2 hours is to keep the patients in the office of the practitioners. This is to guarantee that we have enough work with our patients. That's a totally nonsense. We need time to digest what we have eaten. And this time should be minimum 4 to 5 hours. Nobody has to worry that in that time he gets a low blood sugar and he will die because of this low blood sugar. That's absolutely nonsense. We need to regulate our sugar, and every metabolism in our body is regulated in a rhythm. So we need that rhythm of having some food, then taking time to digest the food, and then have the next food. If we eat all the time, every 2 hours, 5 times, 6 times a day, then we have no possibility in our digestive tract to metabolize, to digest what we have eaten. And because of the bacteria, and we have billions of bacteria in our intestine, they are happy about that food. They would love to get that food, and they have party time then. And party time in our digestion for the bacteria means they produce a lot of alcohol and other toxins like histamine and other biogenic amines. So alcohol in our intestine is one of the worst things we can produce, because that leads to a disease which we call in nowadays leaky gut. 100 years ago, when the medical language was not so much English driven, it was more Latin, we said intestinal auto-intoxication. So that means we produce a lot of toxins in our intestine, which we then reabsorb. They spread over in our whole organism, and they create a lot of side effects and complaints and symptoms where we have our weak points, and everybody has some weak points in his body. So this fermentation process in the intestine is one of the worst things we can create. And this is one of the reasons we recommend people not to eat too much of raw things, because raw food, raw vegetables, raw fruits, especially in the evening, create a lot of fermentation. And for diabetic people, and for everybody, by the way, it is absolutely nonsense to eat every 2 hours. That doesn't make sense from the physiological point of our digestive tract, and it doesn't make sense for our health.
So it's critical to train your metabolism during fasting to, again, lead to a healthier life in general, and of course also manage that chronic disease that one is suffering of. One of the most common things that happen during pregnancy with women is diabetes too. They are why does that usually happen, Dr. Stossier? What is it during pregnancy when one does not have diabetes all their life, but then they get pregnant? They are diagnosed with diabetes too. And can one fast as a pregnant woman to, again, help during her pregnancy?
Last question first. Yes, of course, fasting is not a matter of being not pregnant, or only for men, or only for women, or whatever. It's important for everybody. And yes, during a pregnancy, you can fast very easily. And by the way, fasting is also a strategy in the mainstream medicine. If there's any complaint of a pregnant woman during the pregnancy, to avoid eclampsia and high blood pressure, and also to avoid diabetes during pregnancy, fasting is one of the mainstream instructions the pregnant woman will get. But why do they get the pregnancy? Why do they get the diabetes in pregnancy? First of all, many women, they think now they have to support also the baby and to have to eat for two. That's right in one way. But in the other way, it could be too much of the sugar again. The pancreas, which is responsible for the production of the insulin, can't produce so much insulin in this short period of time. So it's an overload of sugar related to the capacity to produce insulin. First. Second, very often it's also an immune problem, because during the pregnancy, the immune system changes totally. The immune system has to accept the second body in the body. That's not a normal situation, because normally we guarantee our integrity with the immune system. And now we have a second person in our body, and the immune system has to accept it. And we often see that diabetes in that situation is a tendency of an immune problem. Could be an autoimmune problem, could be only a problem of immunity, that you have a lot of antibodies against the pancreas. And then you create a diabetes. But in many cases, it's only an overload of sugar related to the capacity. and also a deficiency of different minerals, because to produce, for example, insulin, we need a trace element called zinc. To metabolize the sugar, you need a trace element called chromium and vitamin B3. And very often pregnant women, they don't have enough of that minerals. So it's also important to look at that cofactors of the metabolism. You need more magnesium, you need more potassium to metabolize the sugar. And we also know that pregnant women have a higher tendency to get some cramps. So this is also one of the main problems that diabetes during that period in life is seen more often than in other people.
You said the key word immunity. Right now, that is the new black. That is the most fashionable word. You walk into supermarkets, they've highlighted that word. And ever since the pandemic started, it's all about the immunity. How does fasting help the immune system? And how, you talk about most people have got autoimmune problems that they're not even aware of. They don't understand why they feel unwell at all times. So how can one boost their immunity through fasting?
Look, first of all, 60% of our immune system is related to our intestine. Why? Because our immunity, again, want to guarantee our integrity. That means our individuality has to be, I would say, guaranteed by the immunity. And we have to make sure that we all have contact to our environment, that especially the surface where we have the contact to our environment is a closed barrier. That's our skin, which you can watch, but this is also the inner surface, which is the intestine. And the size of the intestine, the surface of the intestine is like a football field. And the immune system has to guarantee that all the food which we eat, which is not our own structure, which is not in our metabolism, has to be metabolized totally before it can be reabsorbed. So the bacteria help us, we have a barrier in the intestine, and the immunity behind that barrier watches very carefully if that substance which we reabsorb is allowed to enter the body. So it makes sense to have the immunity in that part of the body. When we have been talking about fermentation right before, and when we have a fermentation, we create a so-called leaky gut. And leaky gut means there are holes in the intestine and substances can enter the body, and the immunity has to work against that substances. So in that case, the immunity may be get an overloaded, overboarded challenge from different substances, which we have to eliminate on the other way. Fasting helps us to improve that immunity, and fasting helps us to guarantee this barrier function of the intestine. And fasting trains also the immunity of not only of the intestine, but for sure mainly in the intestine. To close that barrier is also one of the most important reactions and functions of fasting, which allows us again to stop the invasion of toxins from the intestine, which we called intestinal autointoxication before. So that's an important issue. But on the other side also, when we have, and that's important, which we know since a couple of years, there's a strong relation between the intestine and the brain. When we have a leaky gut, we also have an open blood-brain barrier, and the inflammatory process of the intestine, they enter the brain, and we produce a lot of so-called inflammatory cytokines in the brain too, which gives us, again, an irritation of the brain, and the brain informs the rest of the body that we have an overload of different toxins. So yes, fasting helps us to improve our immunity in one of the best ways, because we find contact to more than 60% of the immunity very easily and in a very strong and very efficient way.
When I was growing up, Dr. Stossier, fasting was always related to a cultural or a religious context. It wasn't something that we understood that if we skip dinner on a daily basis, that's fasting. Or if we have liquid for one day, that's fasting. So everything was under the context of religion. Nowadays, there are so many fasts out there, and I would love to break it down. In fact, I've written it down, and I have to read these because I couldn't remember. Of course, I read it on Dr. Google, and people that, yes, they're doing calorie restriction fast, juice fasting, macronutrient fast. There is a wedding fast, seasonal fasting, intermittent.
Sorry, wedding fast means no weddings?
I don't know. I didn't have time to really investigate on that, but it has made me curious to try and, go back and understand what is a wedding fast. Intermittent fasting, which you've mentioned, has so many different branches. It's got 5:2 fasting, time restricted fasting, overnight fasting, eat, stop fasting, whole day fasting. So I think that's become so fashionable. Everyone wants to fast. They say they fast, but what is the right way to fast? So, which is not non-medical. If I want to apply fasting just generally in my life to boost my health, to maintain my health, what is the best ways to do it? I understand, of course, you fast every Monday, no matter where we've traveled around the world. Monday is your liquid fast. I've seen you drink only herbal teas. And I think let's try and break it down for our viewers on ways to do it, the age group, and maybe, that may help them.
Look, first, Irina, a little bit on a funny answer. If you ask Dr. Google for the first opinion, please ask Dr. Yahoo for the second opinion.
We'll do that next time.
But look, fasting, and you said intermittent fasting. Look, if we go back a few minutes before, we have been talking about rhythm. So we regulate everything in our body in a rhythm. And of course, we have very short rhythms. We have daily rhythms, weekly rhythms, monthly, yearly rhythms. And if you say intermittent fasting, you can choose one of these rhythms to help your body to improve health by fasting. So if you go in the daily rhythm, which is the most physiological way to look at the intestines, we have more capacity to digest food in the morning, less in the evening. So it makes absolutely sense to eat less in the evening. That allows us during the night to regenerate. Our organism can cleanse, can eliminate the toxins. And in the morning, when you go to the toilet, you see the result, hopefully once a day, what your intestine has done. So this is the physiological way. So it makes sense to eat less in the evening, which is also a kind of intermittent fasting. It doesn't make sense to eat a lot in the evening. It doesn't make sense to eat food in the evening, which needs a lot of energy to be digested. So nothing raw in the evening, not heavy digestible foods, not fried and so on. That's the main thing. And not too late in the evening. Because we also have a saying, the intestine goes to bed with the chicken, but it gets up with the chicken in the morning. So if you eat a lot in the evening, and this is what people very often say, they can't take breakfast. Why? Because they have eaten late in the evening. So the organism starts digesting the food early in the morning. And there is no hunger feeling of getting new food in the organism. If you do intermittent fasting in a 24-hour routine, and eat late in the evening, and you think you can then do fasting, that's against the routine, that's against the rhythm, and it's not so helpful then compared with eating less in the evening. So that's the daily routine. How you would call it, it's up to your PR agency you have asked for. So you can take all the names you have said, but it's always the same. Accept the written, eat less in the evening, or if you do dinner canceling, it's also fine. Don't do breakfast canceling. Dinner canceling is what we need. We also know that our regulation from the hormones, when you eat less in the evening, you produce more serotonin and melatonin. It's one side important for the sleeping process, but on the other side, melatonin is the hormone to inform our cells about rest, regeneration, and cleansing. And we also know that this intermittent fasting, and this is the Nobel Prize was awarded in 2016 to a group of Japanese researchers, and there have been a lot of Austrians also in that group. For this process, they have called it autophagia, and that means we have a genetical background of that process of cleansing, of detoxification, which happens in every single cell of the body. But it happens only if we eat less. It doesn't work when you eat a lot. And this is the reason intermittent fasting has become very popular. And they also say this 16-8, but the 16 hours of not eating shouldn't be during the day and you eat a lot in the evening. That doesn't make sense. Yeah. On a weekly basis, if you now go for a weekly rhythm, 1 day a week, you should rest. And you said, and that's absolutely true, we had these recommendations mainly from the religion. But remember, where this recommendation was given, the priest and the doctor have been more or less the same person. Yeah. So there was a knowledge about, yes, it's important to cleanse the brain, to cleanse the spirit, and to help people also in a religious way. But it also makes sense for a physiological way, for the health reason. And if you look around the globe, you get this recommendation in different ways. Here in Europe, and the Catholic Church recommended the fasting in springtime. Why? Because during the winter, where we had more or less a lot of preserved food and not the fresh one, and before the fresh food was coming to cleanse the body, makes absolutely sense. Yeah, from the physiological way. Of course, it was also used as a spiritual cleansing, which is always, and that is what we see when we do fasting from a medical point of view. It's not only a physical cleanse, it's not a cleansing of toxins from the body, it's also a mental, spiritual cleansing. And it's also a possibility to look inside. You get a mirror in front of you, and you can look inside of your emotions, whatever. And we also can treat people with depression or mental disorders with fasting very successfully. So yes, this is also on a weekly basis, but also on a yearly basis. And it makes sense to use all of them in maybe different ways. I would recommend for every person once a year a cleansing, a fasting, a process of detoxification. If you decide to do that once a week, perfect. Then you have 52 days a year where you offer the organism the possibility to cleanse. And we know if you do that, your life expectation is longer, better, your quality of life would be better. And we know also all these things now from medical research. From this work from the Nobel Prize, we know, but only from fly, we know that if you feed flies with less food and you do intermittent fasting, they live 50% longer. We know that also from different animal tribes, from monkeys, we know that from apes, we know that from worms. I don't know how they have fed worms with less food. Don't ask me that, but it works. Yeah, it was not demonstrated on humans because you have to start very early, and the lifespan of humans is too long to know that. But in calculations, we see that we could become maybe 110, 120 years if we do that. Yeah, and if you ask elderly people about their secrets, they all will give you the more or less the same answer: less food, and especially in the evening, less quantity of food in the evening. So there are a lot of different aspects. How you would name it is not the important. The important thing is to do it and create your own rhythm. If you go for dinner canceling, maybe twice a week, perfect. It's a good start. If you decided to eat less once a day or once a week, perfect. It's a good start. But then if you have any disease, and that's my recommendation, really important recommendation. If you have any disease, please ask one of your GPs, who is familiar with fasting as a medical strategy to help you with this disease. And then you get an instruction how to do it and how to follow that for the rest of your life. It's not necessary to do that with your doctor every year, but you get the information, you get the instructions how to do it. But if you have a chronic disease, please go to your doctor and talk about that, or go into one of the centers where they use fasting as a medical strategy, because I said fasting is like a surgery without knife. Nobody would do a surgery on his own without knowing what to do. And same is with fasting.
So intermittent fasting, which is the most common, which people have explored the most over the last 5 years, I would say. There are sometimes doctors say that it would produce acidity in your body if you keep your stomach empty for long hours. What's your take on that, Dr. Stossier?
First of all, we all produce a lot of acidity all our life, otherwise we wouldn't be able to exist, but we also produce a lot of, the opposite is alkalinity. It's a balance, and it's regulated in a way. And yes, fasting is not producing, but is mobilizing the acidity which is in our bodies. If somebody, for example, has gout, uric acid is too high. That's a typical disease of acidity. And then in the situation of fasting, you will mobilize the acidity and you will eliminate it. And yes, on the way out, the toxins, they don't say, nice to meet you, it was a pleasure being in your body. On the way out, they create a lot of, I would say, side effects, could be a lot of problems, complaints. And this is the reason I recommend it. If you have some disease, please ask one of the GPs to support you. But this GP has to be familiar with that. The same is with diabetes. Diabetes is a typical hyperacid situation in the body. When you cleanse, you mobilize a lot of these acidities. This is one of the reasons we have created what we call a base powder, an alkaline powder containing a lot of minerals like sodium bicarbonate, magnesium, potassium, calcium, and so on, to help people to eliminate this acidity in a better way, to neutralize the acidity, and then we are able to eliminate it from the body. But yes, hyperacidity in general is one of our main problems, but that would be, I would say, a separate topic. We could talk a week about alkaline and acidities. Most of our civilizatoric diseases are on the acid side, are too much acidity in the body. And also if you have some complaints like pain, inflammation, joint problems, rheumatic diseases, fibromyalgia, all our common diseases from the cardiovascular system and so on, they are all migraine, they are all hyperacidity in the body. And one of the strategies in fasting is also to neutralize these acidities, to be able to reduce the complaints and to get rid of that complaints. But the acidity is also related to our food intake. So we have food which is more on the acid side and food which is more on the alkaline side. So you can create an alkaline diet by having more vegetables, more cold-pressed vegetable oils, and to avoid the acid food means less meat, less fish, less animal protein, but also, especially for the Indians, less cereals and less lentils, beans, and so on, because they are also very much on the acid side, and especially the industrial prepared food is on the acid side. We need, for healthy reasons, we need more alkaline food than acid food. We need 2 parts alkaline and only 1 part acid food. That means mainly vegetables, mainly potato, but not French fries, mainly cold-pressed vegetable oils, and less meat, fish, cheese, and lentils. And also very important is our eating habit, because if you eat the best alkaline food, vegetables, at the wrong moment in the evening, in the wrong preparation, raw, then you will not be able to metabolize it, and you create a lot of acidity in your body. That's the reason, and acidity is then given by fermentation into the body. And that's the reason I recommend people, for example, to have a glass of wine in the evening much better than a bowl of salad. Because hopefully you have a good quality of wine. That doesn't mean I recommend everybody to start drinking. Yeah? But compared with the quality of alcohol you produce in your body and you can drink a good glass of wine, I would prefer the glass of wine instead of the bowl of salad.
So you always say, eat your wine, as wine is a food for the digestive system. So when we combine a glass of wine and food, how does it disturb our digestive system, Dr. Stossier? Or with coffee with food, or milk with food?
Look, the background is we should not drink with our food because we need concentrated forms of our digestive juices when we eat our food. When you drink a lot of liquid, and now we are talking about water, with your food, you dilute your saliva, you dilute your digestive juices, and you reduce by that your capacity to digest food. So no liquid with food, that means no water, no herbal teas, no sprinkled water and so on with food. Alcohol, coffee, juices, milk doesn't count as liquid. It's a liquid food. In milk, you have protein, carbohydrates, fatty acid. In juices, you have a lot of carbohydrates. My special friends are the smoothies.
Yes, I was going to get to that. It's coming up.
I felt that. This is for sure the next. Yeah, but this is nonsense. Yeah, why would you have a juice? Why should you have a smoothie? Eat that kind of vegetables, food, and so on. Makes much more sense. So these are liquid foods. You have to digest them. So you have to eat that. That means you have to salivate to inform the body, to bring it into the body to be able to digest it. If you drink the juice, if you drink the milk, there's no information, there is no preparation for the food. Nobody knows, your intestine doesn't know how to digest it. But your bacteria are happy and you start again this process of fermentation. So it doesn't make sense. Of course, if you drink a liter of wine with your meal, it's too much, no question. Yeah, because it's not only too much alcohol, you also will dilute your saliva at that moment. So enjoy a glass of wine with an excellent food. That's not a problem. Yeah, but don't drink with your meals.
Dr. Stossier, your favorite smoothies and juices. So one of the fasts, of course, that a lot of people are doing are juice fasts. Throughout the day, drink juices. What is the aftermath and the side effects, apart from fermentation, diseases that can occur with doing a regular juice fast?
Before we are talking about juice fasting, what's a juice? What's a smoothie? A smoothie, a juice is a concentrated form of some vegetables or carbohydrate containing fruits. So if you look in the behind the advertisements, you say you can read on the labels there are 2 kilos of oranges in 1 liter of orange juice. Now try to eat 2 kilos of oranges. That's not possible. But if you look at the American movies, out of the fridge, look, and they have emptied the bottle very quickly. Not only that they have the juice, it's also cold. That's nonsense. On the other side, if you take the smoothies, you take a blender and you use a lot of vegetables and so try to eat that amount of vegetables which you put in the blender for the smoothie. And then second, the best blender is in your mouth. You have your teeth. Your teeth are not only to show them when you laugh to your friends, they are important to break the food and to increase the surface to be able to get in very close contact between food and saliva. That's important because on one side, the digestive process starts in the mouth. And on the second, we have been talking before, on the second, we give the information into the body, what kind of food, how to digest the food. We inform our brain very quickly from the mouth. From the stomach, it takes 30 minutes to inform the brain. And in these 30 minutes, when the smoothie is now in your stomach, this poor guy doesn't know what to do. And the stomach asks the brain, what kind of food, what should I do? What kind of digestive process I have to start? And in this conversation between brain and stomach, in the meanwhile, the bacteria from left and right, they're absolutely happy about that amount of carbohydrates. And please forget, one of the arguments is always, there are so many vitamins in. These vitamins they don't help you because of fermentation. They will be damaged, destroyed in the process of fermentation very quickly. None of these vitamins is getting into our metabolism. Yeah? So it's absolutely nonsense. And what we see, what we can create, you have been talking about or asking for diseases. When we have a lot of fructose in our body and not able to metabolize that, this fructose stays in the intestine and will be complexed with an amino acid called tryptophan. And tryptophan is then necessary to produce serotonin and melatonin. So mood swings is one of the first complaints you can get because of that. And very often you also feed some parasites. And you have parasite infections. They like that carbohydrates, especially when there's a lot of fructose. And the second is you also can get a fungus infection from Candida albicans, for example, which is also a process of increased fermentation. So you produce a lot of toxins again, you get allergies, food intolerances, but also for me, one of the most important is this mood swings and sleeping problems because of the complexation of tryptophan. So for me, it's absolutely nonsense. If you want to have the vegetables, please eat the vegetables. But this is the result of our society to go. Everybody is in a hurry. Nobody pays respect to the food. Nobody pays respect to the people who have prepared the food, and nobody eats this food really as we should do that. And we should celebrate our food intake and not on the road, on the way to and in between, without concentration, without paying respect to the nature and to whatever. But for the most important, it's also respect to ourselves. We are worth to be nutrified and nourished in the best way, and we don't do that on the road.
Dr. Stossier, we've gone through the benefits of fasting. Are there any warnings that you would give if someone is fasting for the first time, or tips that if one wants to begin and apply fasting, be it on their daily or weekly routine, what are the do's and don'ts, the best way I could put it, for fasting?
So first of all, if you have any chronic disease or if you have any severe complaints, don't do it by yourself. As long as you are healthy, young, strong, whatever, start as early as possible and try to find a way which fits into your daily routine and you can implement it in a way. For example, everybody can do a dinner canceling. That's not a big problem. Nobody will die because of that. And dinner canceling, if you start with that and you see you survive the night, then maybe you are motivated to do that the next week in the same way and then start slowly. But if you have any disease, please do that in a context where the people supporting you are familiar with the side effects or the reactions of fasting. Most important, when you do fasting, please drink. That's important because you want to mobilize, transport, eliminate the toxins.
Drink water, drink herbal teas, just to clarify.
Yes, yeah, sorry, no alcohol and of course no juices. Vegetable broth is also a possibility. That means you cook the vegetables and drink only the liquids where the vegetables have been in. Second, you need a lot of minerals during the fasting. So the minimum would be a substance called sodium bicarbonate, which you can get nearly everywhere in a pharmacy or in a health food store. You can get sodium bicarbonate. We have been shortly talking about the acidity. Fasting, yes, your metabolism turns into an acid situation because of the mobilization of toxins, and therefore it's important to have enough alkaline values in your body. And that's mainly minerals, sodium bicarbonate, magnesium, potassium, zinc, whatever is necessary. I think it's helpful. And if you have any problems, please check them before you start fasting. That's, I think, the most important. But I think you should start. That's the simplest thing. Start with eating less once a day. And intermittent fasting means also to eat less in the evening and try to eat maybe in the evening only a soup, but not a lentil soup, a vegetable soup, or having only some boiled potatoes or only a few vegetables. And you see how you feel in the night, in the evening, you're sleeping will become better, your activity in the morning will be better, maybe your bowel movement is better, and so on. Step by step, you can implement this way of fasting into your daily routine.
Is it safe for children to fast, Dr. Stossier?
Yes.
At what age, and what is the best way to introduce children to fasting?
First of all, we have to introduce them into fasting. This is the way of education. They will do the same than the parents. If the parents eat late in the evening, the children will do it in the same way. If you, as a parent, don't eat late in the evening, the children will not eat late in the evening. Yeah, so that's the way of how education works. Yeah, you have to point it out. You have only to do it. That's the most important. But if you ask me as a physician, what age can we use fasting as a medical strategy? We can use that at any age, because it doesn't mean that the child has only to drink liquid. Of course, we have to adapt it, to eat less, to train it in eating slowly and so on. And children reacting very quickly. We have children, or I have treated children from the age of 5, 6, or if necessary, also a bit earlier. But the strategy is very simple. You have to change only a few things. They are reacting very quickly. But of course, at the age of, let's say, 10, 12, 15, you can also inform them about the way of eating, if they have any problem, any disease. But never you can do that with children on their own. You also need one of the relatives to do it with the child, because otherwise it doesn't work, especially when you do a medical therapy. To cleanse the intestine and to drink, for example, Epsom salt in the morning or magnesium citrate. If you give the child the magnesium citrate to drink and you have a great and a big meal, that doesn't work. Yeah? So you need a relative who is doing the therapy with the child to guide the child through the therapy. But it's not, no matter of age.
Intolerances, food intolerances, many people, including myself, every time I get a test, I'm intolerant to some food or the other. There is a connection with fasting, Are you for certain foods that we should completely cut off from our diet, which further helps in enhancing our health? Example, gluten has been beaten to death, dairy. Is there certain foods that one should cut off just permanently, or at least periodically or seasonally?
No, that's not necessary, but that's a very specific topic, and allow me the information. I have written a book about allergy and food intolerances, which people can download on our homepage, intestinal-health.com. We have been talking about the barrier function of the intestine. As long as this barrier function is working, is actually there, yeah, we don't have any food intolerances. The food intolerance is the result of what we call the leaky gut. And the leaky gut is the result of our eating habit and so on. So we have seen a lot more food intolerances than the last couple of years. This is the price we have to pay because of our eating habit, because of our food, the quality of food, because of the increased poisoning with different things. Yeah. And yes, in that situation, if somebody is intolerant, he has to avoid the food for a certain amount of time. Now it depends how we are able to re-establish this barrier function of the intestine. Yeah. And that could take, I would say, half a year, or sometimes we have patients, we say we need a plan for the next 4 or 5 years to establish a healthy situation. But then very often you can have the food again. Totally different is a situation with the lactose, milk, sugar in the milk, because that's an enzyme weakness, and physiologically we have less activity to metabolize and to digest that lactose when we get older. And sorry to say, that happens to all of us. Statistically, 50% of adult people are lactose intolerant. depending also on geographical situation and genetic situation, whatever, but statistically, yeah. So for adult people, it doesn't make sense to eat so much milk and yogurt. But the other things are more or less man-made and related to our intestinal situation. And when we treat the intestine, in many cases, we can re-establish this barrier function and people are able to eat that food again. So it's not necessary to cut off totally gluten or casein or whatever. But yes, because of the industrial preparation, yeah, especially gluten and casein are the main problems, because casein concentration has increased so much in the last 20, 30 years, and the amount of casein people are eating has increased very much. So it's not so easy digestible, yeah. But yes, I think we can get rid of our food intolerances when we look at the intestines.
So one of your favorite topics is chewing, and you also say chewing is fasting. I would love for you to share that example you give on that fantastic burger. If we chew McDonald's versus God's gift of that organic burger. Please share that with our viewers.
Chewing is really important because, first of all, our digestion starts in the mouth. But therefore, it's necessary to chew the food to make sure that our saliva can get in contact with the food. The information we have been talking about and so on. And we have only in our mouth the influence on our digestive process. When we have swallowed the food, it's not possible to ask the stomach to chew the food and to be more active because we have not done that in our mouth. So therefore, this is the crucial thing where we have an influence on our digestive tract. And yes, one of the examples is if you go to McDonald's, if you know that restaurants.
No, I don't actually.
And then Kentucky Fried Chicken is the same. Then you can go there and have a meal and eat it very slowly, chewing very in details. And if there's a salad leaf in, you may get the last vitamin out of that salad leaf. And then you go to the restaurant, perfect restaurant where you get only vegetable food, organic food, prepared according to the rhythm of the moon, prepared with a lot of love. And you take it in your mouth and you don't chew it, you swallow it, you gulp it down. You're not able to get one of the ingredients of that excellent food, and you start getting a lot of maldigestive processes because of not having paid the respect to the food which you should do. So the most important influence on the process of digestion is really the chewing, because we have the influence. That's our decision. That's our responsibility. We can do. You can't delegate the chewing. You cannot chew for me and I can't chew for you. That's up to ourselves. And I think that's the most important. And if that message goes to the people, yeah, that's really crucial for their health and for their eating habit. And if you look, when we start our life as a suckling, yeah, we also try to chew the milk. We produce saliva by suckling the milk, and then we mix the milk with the saliva, and then we swallow. Yeah. So this is the way it should be. Mix the saliva with the food, and then the process of chewing starts perfectly.
So chewing here as fasting that you have mentioned also is when you chew, you land up eating less food. Because yes, so that itself, call it a great way to weight loss. So that is the angle of fasting with chewing. When we talk about nutrition, Dr. Stossier, and I know we're running out of time, we probably have 5 minutes left. Nutrition. People have not understood the difference between food and nutrition. The importance is always given to the food. What are the principles of a good nutrition?
Look, nutrition is, yes, now we have discussed the way to digest food. And nutrition is on one side food, the quality of food, the ingredients, micronutrients, which we need to get. But on the other side, people always think that's the only way of nutrition. Yeah, It's not the salad leaf which gives us the energy. It's not the piece of meat which gives us the energy. It's not the cereal which gives us all the minerals. It's what we get from them by our digestive tract. So we have to extract the ingredients of all the nutrients with our digestive capacity. And that's nutrition. Nutrition is the result of food and digestion. The quality of food is important. Yes, if we overdo it, we get fermentation or putrefaction. If we have not enough minerals, micronutrients, we don't get enough of them into the body. But if we have a maldigestion, the best food is not able to avoid maldigestion if we don't chew well, if we don't pay respect to the eating habit. So it's always a combination of both. That's the important thing.
Eat breakfast, eat good lunch, less over dinner, try and cancel dinner over time, which I have to share the story, Dr. Stossier. I stopped eating dinner almost, I think, around a year ago. If I am hungry, I may have a little soup or a clear soup in the night. And I did my epigenetic test, which I have shared with you. From my biological age, which is 52, and I proudly say that, my age is now, my cell age, if I may call it, is 10 years younger. Fasting has given me that.
That's the reason you look so nice.
Makeup counts, you know. So fasting has benefited, and that's where healthy longevity, anti-aging, is related with fasting. So do you believe that apart from using all these anti-aging creams and all, if we fast from our skin to our looks to our spiritual to just our overall, it'll boost us, making us look younger?
I think that's more important than anything from the outside. Fasting helps us to stay healthy, to keep our metabolism healthy, to keep, as you said, your cell age healthy. And I told you, and we discussed it, intermittent fasting is also one of the strongest tools to extend our life expectation. Yeah. So yes, of course, when we cleanse, which we do every day, when we cleanse, when we regenerate, yes, we stay healthier, we keep healthier, and all our cells, our metabolism will be much more efficient. And that means also we have less aging processes. And to reduce that and to age slowly, it's not an anti-aging because we get older, yes, but we reduce that process of aging very effectively by fasting.
So before we conclude this fantastic session, you know, I never get, there's always something I learned from you. Even after 15 years, I'm always making notes on the side. So Dr. Stossier, thank you so much for your time. You know, we're going to let you go now, unfortunately. I wish I had more time with you to discuss so much more and look forward to having more discussions. I want to thank Rejuvenate for this fantastic platform that they've created to help us all improve our health. And we thank you very much, Dr. Stossier, for your time.
Thank you to you. It was a pleasure for me too. And hopefully we had some inspiring discussions for our listeners.
Absolutely.
And I wish you all the best, healthy day and healthy life.
Have a great day. Thank you, Dr. Stossier.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.